Iceland next week for another polar expedition. And this all directly ties into what I do now, my brand, my ethos, and why I go into these places where they are so unforgiving, so hostile that things like this is a common occurrence. I had frostbite on 3 fingers actually, and I lost this one. I have windburn on my face from hurricane force winds that were absolutely savage and unforgiving, leaving I left a slight gap in my face mask in my goggles, which left a windburn right here. So what got me into this world of polar exploration and embracing and actually seeking out suffering to this degree, that journey began a long time ago when I first moved to the US. I moved to the US at the age of 13 from India and Singapore, born in India. And soon after moving to the US, I got very heavily into drugs, into alcohol. I used to cut myself. I still have these scars on my arm, burning myself. I still have the scar on my arm from that, and just consumed in this world of self-destruction. And watching the movie Black Hawk Down was the trigger that changed my life, being that this is a group of veterans. I'm sure many of y'all have seen it. And that movie, it planted a seed in me that transformed this very, it transformed the nature of my soul in this very selfish, meaningless, worthless existence I was living at the time. And especially that scene, which many of y'all might remember, when Gary Gordon and Randy Sugar, they volunteered to go down to set up a defensive perimeter to protect Michael Durant. And they both died. And they received a Medal of Honor posthumously for their courage. And that triggered in me something that, you know, what kind of human being would do that? The courage to sacrifice your life, knowingly put your life on the line for someone else. And so almost overnight, I stopped doing drugs, and it took me about 1.5 years, but then I finally decided to join the Marines. And it took me so long because I have a blood disorder that transports about 25 to 30% less oxygen through my body. So 2 doctors told me that Marine Corps boot camp would kill me because of this blood disorder. So I had to sort of, and I have flat feet, I have scoliosis. So it was a bit of a genetic mess, and I had to get medical waivers in order to fight my way into the Marines. This was a post 9/11 world. So here's a young dumb kid who wants to go 03, go get into be a grunt. Yeah, we'll find a way, you know. And I think if it wasn't a post 9/11 world, I would not have gotten in. But thankfully I did. And obviously I not only survived, I graduated infantry school as the honor graduate of my platoon. Because, and that was the starting point of my sorry, Sig. Hoorah. Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. So that was and the Marines, I mean, that was it transformed my life. It's a very much a part of who I am today, but that was the start of my birth in recognizing really the limitless power we have. I mean, 2 doctors here, right? 2 hematologists, blood doctors told me this would kill me. And I not only survived, but I graduated as the honor graduate. So I started to recognize we are all capable of so much more than what the world tells us and what even we think we are capable of, right? And I thrived in the Marines. I not only I found beauty in the suffering. It taught me, this was the first time I started to recognize the tremendous gift in adversity. Marine Corps boot camp was obviously hard, and all of it, I absolutely loved it. You know, I looked for every opportunity I can to test myself, to challenge myself. And I found the power and transcendence over that suffering. That was the real gift. So I started looking for it in other ways. I went mountain climbing, cave diving, skydiving. I mean, outdoor sports, after joining the Marines, outdoor sports became my next playground to explore the limitlessness of the human potential. Because I was scared of everything before this, scared of heights, scared of tight spaces, scared of open water. So every single fear I was systematically confronting and transcending. And then in 2007, I was deployed to Iraq as an infantry non-commissioned officer, where I did multiple things out there. One of my jobs was to walk out in front of our vehicle convoys whenever we got the danger zones like bridges and looking for the IEDs. So obviously, as many of y'all can relate, you know, it's a somewhat dangerous job. But once again, I thrived out there. It was obviously hard. I'm sure many, obviously, y'all can relate to life on deployment has its challenges, but it was beautiful, right? Like, it was beautiful, that experience. And so I thrived out there, and I took all the skills I'd been learning at this point by pushing my limitations in multiple other avenues, from climbing mountains to free climbing rock walls without the safety of a rope. I had developed this kind of comfort zone with fear and with risk and with suffering, and I was bringing that with me. So I thrived, but the greatest battle, as again, I'm sure some of y'all can relate, was after coming back home. You know, I lost a very close friend of mine to the war, came back, lost a couple of junior Marines to suicide, and I struggled with life in this world. I wanted to go back to war every chance I could. I kept volunteering to go back to Afghanistan, go back to Iraq. at this point, it was kind of dying down. I went to Iraq in 07, 08, so came back in 08. This was kind of, things like when we left Iraq, it was the last time a battalion size element was in charge of the AO. A company size element took over, and we handed over to a lot of Iraqis, to the Iraqi police and Iraqi army to take over. So, I wasn't able to go back. And so I went to go pursue my master's in journalism because I wanted to go back to war as a combat journalist. I just wanted and people in this room can relate to this, the kind of paradoxical peace that one finds in war, right? It's this strange experience. While all kinds of fucked up and horrific in many ways, there's a kind of peace that one can find out there. And so I wanted to go back to that, but didn't get my opportunity. And so I kept kind of struggling and figuring out what I wanted to do now in this world. I didn't end up going to war as a combat journalist because I met my now ex-wife. I met my wife at the time. So I was like, a combat journalist is not a very good lifestyle for being married. So I was building a business. I had a corporate job for a little bit, building a business, but gradually things were getting worse. Like I was drinking a Saturday and then 5 days a week. And I was drinking like 750 milliliters of vodka a day at its worst. When this hit its worst, to the point that once after five days of binge drinking, I woke up and I was seconds away from picking up a knife and slitting my wrists. So that moment was the trigger when I started to kind of climb out of this abyss in the darkness. I started going deep into researching neuroscience, into psychology and spirituality, and learning the things that led me to my work in my book called Fearvana. And the core thing I learned to transcend my own demons at the time was, I was diagnosed with PTSD by the therapists and the doctors. And I started to learn the distinction between post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, we live in a world that pairs the two, but post-traumatic stress is not indicative of post-traumatic stress disorder. By attaching the label disorder to it, it transforms our relationship to this post-traumatic stress, right? Like I had post-traumatic stress. I struggled with survivor's guilt. I was jumpy with loud noises, didn't like crowds, a lot of the things many of us can relate to. But that did not mean it was a disorder. These were normal human responses to war, right? Like I lived 7 months in a zone where loud noises meant death. Inevitably, I was more hypervigilant. It wasn't a disorder. It was a normal human response. And so I transformed my relationship to post-traumatic stress and recognized that, look, it's not something wrong here. This just is. And the acceptance of that isness, I can do something with it. I can choose to make it something beautiful. My guilt never went away, but for a long time, when I came out of this darkness that I was in and climbing out of this abyss, what I did was I put a picture of my friend that I lost in the war up on my wall, and it said, "This should have been you. Earn this life." So my guilt became my ally, and that was one of the core learnings that I had that I went through during this process of healing. Initially just to heal myself, but then started sharing this work and wrote this book, Fearvana. All the profits we donate to charity, because I wanted to share what I was learning to help others combat their own suffering. Obviously, I was not and am not the only person who suffered. We all go through it in one way or another. And I started to learn that the greatest problem in the human condition is our negative relationship to suffering. We view stress, fear, struggle, pain as something negative. Guilt is a bad emotion. We always say that they're bad emotions, right? People said, don't feel guilty. It's not your fault. And look, I get it. Like rationally, we all know war happens. Bullets fly where they fly. You can't control who lives and dies out there. But emotionally, it did not make my guilt go away. And I recognized that it wasn't a bad emotion, as I was often being told, that there were no bad emotions. Fear, stress, anxiety, guilt, anger, sadness, they're not bad. They're just more challenging. And the fact of the matter is there's no good or bad emotions. There's only emotions. And it's up to us to decide what we do with them. So I was able to start reframing my relationship to stress, to post-traumatic stress, to guilt, to my anxiety, and started to find the beauty in them, to transcend them, to find peace within them, and then start helping others do the same as well. Because that is the single greatest barrier that keeps us from ultimately living the life we want. And ultimately, what do we seek? I mean, if you dig deep beneath the why of why are we here? Why are you all here? Why do we get a job? Why do we get a relationship? Anything, right? To be happy, or some version of that, to be fulfilled, happiness, inner peace, whatever you want to call it. When you dig beneath the why of everything we do, it's that. And when you view suffering as something negative, it becomes a barrier, an impediment to that happiness. And this ideal is so embedded, like the flawed ideal in our relationship to happiness and our negative one to suffering, it's embedded in the very ethos of this country, right? We talk about the pursuit of happiness. That is a flawed ideal, because happiness is a side effect of pursuing meaning, not pursuing happiness. When you pursue happiness, you're looking for, we live in a world that we think, I'll get happy when I get there. Whatever the there is, I make the $1 million, I get that job, I get that car, I get that house, I get that relationship, then I'll be happy. But the fact is, it doesn't matter what the there is. Whenever you arrive there, there will be new problems. And as I always like to say, progress is not the elimination of problems. Progress is the creation of new problems. So when you start falling in love with suffering, with pain, with fear, with struggle, not viewing it as something negative and actually embracing it, and not only embracing it is kind of phase one, the next step is seeking it. Then no matter whether you're pursuing a worthy challenge, as all of you are here in this room right now, or life punches you in the face, which we all know it also does from time to time, you will be able to smile in the face of that suffering. You'll be able to embrace it. And when you can smile in suffering, the entire journey of life, through the ups and the downs, it becomes blissful. You can find peace. You can find happiness even when there's pain, even when there's sadness. And so that's what led me to then writing my book, Fearvana, building a business around it, and seeking my version, my expression of Fearvana is these endurance sports. So I became an ultra runner. I've done things like running 50 miles around a cul-de-sac for 1,000 loops around a cul-de-sac all night. I've run for 24 hours. I've climbed mountains in the Himalayas. I spent 1 month dragging a 190-pound sled for 350 miles across the world's second largest ice cap. As I mentioned, I was in Antarctica last year on a polar expedition to the South Pole, where I lost one of my fingers to frostbite. And I'm now going, well, I was scheduled to go back to Antarctica this year, but I didn't get the permit. And what this is all leading up to, what I'm training to do, is to become the first human being ever to do a unsupported, human-powered crossing of the entire continent of Antarctica. It'll be 110 days, dragging a 400-pound sled, 1,700 miles across the entire continent in temperatures, I mean, just savage, unforgiving polar storms for just over 3.5 months, almost 4 months. So that's what this is all now leading up to, and I'll be doing that next year in 2023. Is kind of like my fullest expression of Fearvana is polar exploration. And when you're out in these playgrounds, there's a great deal of suffering. Being in a polar storm is one of the most savage, unforgiving environments a human being can experience, and that's why I go play in these playgrounds. You know, it's not the suffering in and of itself that I seek, but the suffering is the means, not the purpose. The purpose is the transcendence. And that's what Fearvana essentially is. It's this idea that two seemingly contradictory forces, fear and nirvana, they can actually coexist as one. And in fact, fear is not the antithesis of nirvana, it's the access point to it. Fear and all its cousins, fear, pain, stress, anxiety, suffering, all these things are the vehicle to bliss. And we can all relate to this, because everyone here has gone through the harshness of military training, and that suffering, why I still go seek it. It's what it gives me when I tap into it, when I transcend that suffering and can still take that next step forward. You're tapping into the human spirit at its absolute finest. You're tapping into the essence of the human soul. And that is, it's beautiful. I mean, it's addictive in its own way. It's unreal. You can't put words to that. And so that's why I still play on these playgrounds. And that's why I help others find their own version of that through Fearvana and finding their own Fearvana. It doesn't have to be skiing across Antarctica. It doesn't have to be running ultramarathons. It can be playing a guitar, playing music, playing, writing books, writing movies, whatever it may be, coding, whatever the thing may be, right? Finding your own path of Fearvana. And when you pursue it, there will be struggle. You will suffer, but that's not a bad thing. Because as I always like to say, is if you don't seek out a worthy struggle, struggle will find you anyway. So seek out that worthy struggle is the fundamental ethos of everything I am. The fundamental philosophy of Fearvana is that the path to inner peace is the pursuit of a worthy inner war. And we all have our own inner war that we're pursuing. We all have our own worthy battles that we're fighting. And like I said, if you don't seek it, life's going to hand it to you anyway. So you might as well seek it, because you get to choose which suffering you want to endure. You could quit a job you hate to build a business. Either way, you're going to suffer. At every point, every crossroads in life, you're going to suffer. The question is, which struggle, which suffering are you willing to endure? And when you fall in love with it, the journey will become more beautiful. And so that's a little bit about me. I wanted to just share tiny bits and about the philosophy, and then kind of open it up to questions and just make this a little bit more interactive. So thank you again for having me, for listening. And I look forward to engaging y'all a little bit more and answering any questions that you may have.
I have a question.
Shoot.
So yeah, thanks for sharing. Your background. Very personal. But it's good to hear that. It's not always easy. People go through stuff, and you can't always help it, but you just gotta fight through it.
Mhm.
And man, you've done some crazy stuff. It's awesome. I've been like looking into a lot of like rock climbing documentaries and things like
Awesome.
that, and like how intense it could be. And like
Yeah.
try to do some rock climbing on the side, like at like in in buildings and stuff. And eventually, I do want to go out and do something like like actual rock climbing. So like how did you start? Um, you know, you obviously you didn't start doing like these like like the challenge you're about to do 110 days.
Yeah, you build your.
Crossing that. Like how did you begin doing stuff like that?
You start like anything, right? You take the first step, start small. So I used to live in Austin, Texas at the time. And so I first started going to a rock gym. And then that led me
Mhm.
to going outdoors. I took a class. The first time I went mountaineering, I took an intro to mountaineering class in Alaska. And then from there, I climbed harder mountains in the Himalayas, in Bolivia. Last year, I was up on Denali trying to, we were aiming to climb the tallest mountain in North America, and we got turned around by horrific storms on the summit. So it was just taking the first step in and gradually kind of pushing that line further and further and further out. So if rock climbing is your thing, go to a rock gym, right? Like start there. Take a where do you live?
I'm actually in Killeen, Texas right now. So yeah, that's what I meant to say. I do go to a rock gym now.
Yeah, so
So
start going outdoors, right? Like take to ask them, hey, can you teach me bouldering outdoors, or learn the sport climbing, learn the ropes of sport climbing, how to tie all those knots. The one thing I do recommend is don't be like a dumbass like I initially was, where at first I was like, I'm just gonna buy all my shit and go outside, and then you make a lot of mistakes, and it's a dangerous sport. So I then was like, all right, I'm gonna take a class and do this right, learn from people how to do this correctly, set up anchors, set up top rope anchors, learn all the knots. So just systematically pushing the line further and further, and then you will find, like, I got into every outdoor sports you could possibly think of, from skydiving to rock climbing to scuba diving. And then I started to find which one was my particular passion more so than others, and then just pushing that edge further and further. And you will discover on the journey, where you want to go with it, and where how far you want to go. Like some people might like trad climbing and alpine climbing, or bouldering or mountain climbing. There's no right or wrong, right? It's to each their own. But just keep pushing that line systematically, smartly, with the right training, and you'll start to kind of keep discovering which playground you like to play, you like to play in more so than others. Polar exploration became my thing more so than any others, and so that's why now I'm focused on polar exploration.
so like so I just graduated a coding boot camp, and I'm looking for a job and stuff. So how like did you fund yourself to do those kind of things, and like
Yeah,
how
good question.
find the time and stuff? Like did you just do it like a couple times a week, or
It's so for when I first finished grad school, I had a corporate job for a year and a half, which I was not a big fan of. I hated it and I quit. And then I spent all my money. And I'm not saying, dude, some of the things I did were in hindsight maybe not the best way to do it. Life has worked out, so I'm grateful. But I spent like all the money I saved, and spent $15,000 to go ski across Greenland for a month.
no? Okay.
But ever since doing the Greenland crossing in 2012, I haven't done a major expedition since last year because I just couldn't afford it. These things are very, very, very expensive. So
Hmm.
it took me a long time to build my business up. I mean, that's what, since last year, so 8 years. And I was doing mini trips, like weekend stuff, 4 or 5 day trips, but nothing big. And then
Mm.
last year, I was blessed. My business is doing very, very well. I also got into crypto fairly early, so crypto trading has been very
Nice.
um, and between crypto and my business, I'm able to fund the lifestyle and go to these places. And then the key thing is like we all talk about working hard, and obviously that should be a given. Sometimes in some places it's not, but you also have to work smart, right? So I delegate in my business because there's only so much you can do when you're an ice cap for like months on end. Like I'll be in Norway in this winter for 2 months doing cross-country skiing because I wasn't allowed to go back to Antarctica this winter. So speaking of obstacles, you're going to encounter a shitload of obstacles in this journey. Obviously, you all are, whether it's coding, whether it's pursuing outdoor climbing, there's going to be a shitload of obstacles in your way. You want to reframe how you view obstacles. So to me, obstacles are an opportunity. I was rejected to go from Antarctica. I lost my finger to frostbite despite not making a single mistake. I was like doing things right out there. But my blood disorder transports 25% less oxygen through my body. Less than ideal for anybody, let alone an athlete, right? So, and my other expedition, I was supposed to go to Patagonia, got canceled, right? So I just, every time there was an obstacle, I'm like, all right, great, there's a new learning here. So I'm now going to Norway for 2 months. And finding, like, I found a new alternative. But when I'm out on an ice for 2 months, you can't sort of run a business. So working smart, delegating to others, partnering with the right people is how I've been able to grow my business while now getting to a point where I'm able to do these things and do these things to the degree that I want to do them. We're actually also working with a documentary crew in Hollywood to create a documentary around this crossing, similar to the kind of documentaries that you're talking about that you've seen, like Free Solo, 14 Peaks, things like that. So we're working on telling that story as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great question. So when I first wrote Fearvana, it's a very spiritual concept, right? And I was an unknown author with no brand, no platform, like complete unknown, right? So I was like, all right, I'm going to need an endorsement to give this book firepower. And it's a very spiritual concept. Who's the kind of spiritual leader in the world? The Dalai Lama. So why can't he endorse it? And this is a very, very important piece about the mindset piece. The first time that entered my mind, I immediately rejected it. Like, there's no way that could happen. Who am I? I'm a nobody. He's not going to endorse my book, right? Like, no way. And I sidelined the idea of even trying. And later on, I was very blessed to get some other noteworthy endorsements, like from Seth Godin, Jack Canfield, many other people. I was like, all right, why not try? What's the worst that could happen? If he says no, I'm exactly where I was anyway. So why not give it a shot? So I reached out to the contact form on the Dalai Lama's website, got no response. Usually those contact forms like disappear into somewhere and nobody ever checks them out. So I did a ton of research on Google and I found one name and email address of a monk in the monastery there. Reached out to him because now at least it's an actual person with an email address, not just a random contact form. Reached out to him. I shot a personal video. This was a really game-changing strategy for anybody here listening to connect with people, because building relationships is one of the most valuable skills to getting further in life. I'm blessed with, even though I'll be like solo in Antarctica, I have a team of people who are helping me in every way, right? So I've learned over time how to effectively build these relationships. So I shot a video sharing what I've been through, what we're trying to do with Fearvana. As I mentioned, all the profits going to charity. This monk connected me to like 3 other monks, finally found the right person. And over 5-6 months of building a relationship with this monk, I would follow up. And this is another thing about the mindset piece. The whole time I would constantly had doubt. I write an email and I'm not hearing back for 1 week, for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks. And then my mind is saying, why would they write you? What if they hate my book? They don't know you. You're a nobody. What makes you think they're going to endorse your book? Like all these thoughts that we all know what they're like, right? Like the doubt, the fear, that who am I stuff. But the thing is, you can have these thoughts, but you don't have to be defined by those thoughts. You don't have to listen to those thoughts. Like one of my core tenets in my teaching is you are not your thoughts, you're not your feelings, you're not your experiences. You are the thinker of your thoughts, the feeler of your feelings, and the experiencer of your experiences. Meaning there is a space between the things we go through in life, between our thoughts, between our feelings, and who we want to be outside of them. These things do not have to define us. Many of us, we get attached to our thoughts as real, and they define our actions. And I was able to, I'm much better at it now. At that point, we're all constantly evolving and learning, but recognize this doubt, this fear, and transcend it and keep following up, keep building the relationship. And after about 5-6 months of doing this with this particular monk, he wrote me back saying, considering everything you've been through and your genuine desire to serve, I'll press your case. And I had only asked for a 1-line endorsement, but I was very, very blessed, very honored, very humbled that the Dalai Lama wrote the foreword for my book, and he actually sent me a letter with his seal and his signature that we now have framed in the house. And for me personally, it was a huge honor and a blessing, but for marketing of the book also, like for an unknown author to get the Dalai Lama foreword, game changer. So it was very cool, very, very, very cool opportunity. And I was very honored by that. How did that one happen? So I've been blessed with a decent amount of publicity on many big podcasts and places like Forbes, Inc., Entrepreneur.com. I was on Military Times. I did an interview with them. So I think just kind of systematically, you have to it's a lot of work. Like PR companies, in full honesty, they don't do much. Like most of my big victories have happened through my own hustling and own outreach. I can't remember how this one happened. I mean, I've had some small victories from a PR company. This might have been that, but a lot of it was just like building relationships with people, which then led me to the next one. Forgive me, I can't remember exactly how the Marine Corps Times one happened, how I connected with that. I think that one might have been with the, yeah. Like I've been in the last few months, I've been everywhere. I was in Mexico doing a 10-day darkness retreat, and then in Galapagos. So that was actually one of the more challenging and beautiful experiences I've done. Just a few weeks ago, I spent 10 days in a completely dark room, sitting still in dark, like you cannot see your hand from the darkness for 24 hours a day for 10 full days. That was quite. So you go to a place, these places called the Darkness Retreat, and I was doing 2 juices a day. Not you can do food, but I chose not to because I wanted to add hunger into the experience. So I did 2 juices a day, and they have a kind of 2-door system where twice a day they'll bring a juice, put it in the door, and kind of close the other door, so it stays dark. You literally have 0 exposure to light for the entire 10 days, and so your brain actually starts to hallucinate. It's like being on a psychedelics. You start seeing lights and stuff like that because of but you're not taking anything. It's natural hallucination. So and I did 2 juices a day for 8 days. In the last 40 hours, I did only a water fast. No juices or food at all.
I do actually regarding the water fast. So I've been looking at beginning my own, knowing that particularly like electrolytes going to be a big thing moving forward. I'm doing currently. I'm walking across America, so I know I'm
Awesome.
doing I'm exhilarating a lot of energy moving forward, but I only really have to average about 10 miles a day to hit my goal of getting to Savannah on my 30th birthday.
Wow. Okay.
Which is less than a month away, and I'm in Tallahassee, Florida. So
wow.
my biggest thing with the water fast is that I'm trying to overcome the what is it? The doubt and enjoying the suffering as you were talking about earlier, and overcoming that obstacle and establishing the willpower. And so my biggest question is like, when you hit those moments, I mean, I guess with yours, it was like, hey, like you only have this, whereas like I'm fresh with opportunities of established or having that opportunity for food. So when you kind of get to that moment of like when you're hungry, like I know the first few days, like what did you do to change and click your mind to a different spot, so you're trying not to think of thoughts of having food or wanting food?
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely. So specifically related to hunger, I mean, I did the 40-hour water fast in the darkness, but before that, I'd done an 80-hour water fast.
Okay.
And so no food for 80. And to navigate the kind of thing you're talking about, I put all the food up on my counter, and so I could see food. And so when you get to that point, you're feeling really, really hungry in your mind, and you're seeing food right there. So I very specifically did that in order to train my mind to transcend that thought, but have it be, because this is what I mean by like, you're not your thoughts, right? You have to talk to like, it sounds very kind of schizophrenic, but you're talking to yourself as if it's a different entity.
Yes. No,
So
I get that completely.
you
Sorry
get it,
to
right?
interrupt.
Yeah. So it's if you actually hit me up on fearvana.com, there's a document I put together on like 25 ways to navigate the pain cave. So there's different strategies. So I call this place the pain cave. This is whether it be, and you approach it many different ways, like through hunger, or when you're running for 24 hours, or like what you're doing, you're going to hit moments where it just fucking sucks. There's no two ways about it, right? So when you're in that pain cave, there's many different tools and strategies to fight that pain cave. So on fearvana.com, if you just hit me up, I think the document's on there. I'm happy to share with you. I can continue the conversation as well. But specifically to hunger, it's a fascinating challenge to, like, one of the strategies I do, that's why I had the food up right there, is to kind of go deeper into the pain cave. Like when I ended the 80-hour water fast, I did After 76 hours of no food, no calories at all, I went and did a 2-hour run followed by 2 hours of tire dragging. It was fucking brutal, like absolutely brutal, in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. So you're also dealing with the isolation and the darkness. And so I push further into the pain cave as much as I can. And this will kind of come with more and more practice. I'm sure you've been developing a lot having walked across the country. It's like when you're in that moment, I'm not hoping for it to be easy. I'm literally like, you don't have to talk the way I talk, use whatever words and terminologies that resonate with you. But in my mind, like when I'm in that space, I literally am like calling forth as much pain, you know? I'm like, bring on the fucking pain. Like one time when I did the 50-mile run around the cul-de-sac, I was at a point, and I don't know how many hours in, and I was literally saying, and again, it's gonna sound psychotic, but I was like, I am praying to the devil to fucking rise out of hell and commit his soul to destroying me. Like I want every demon, every fucking devil to try to destroy me right now and have their whole focus be on me, because I will stand there, look you in the eye, stand toe to toe with the devil and bury that motherfucker in his own blood. And I'm literally talking out loud like this, like a psycho in my neighborhood while I'm doing this. So the point is, you're reframing your relationship to pain as something that you are seeking, or something that you want. And especially that's why hunger is such a beautiful battle to experience, because it tests your willpower in a way that's profound. So I think just like falling in love with that, embracing that, and pushing that edge further and further, you know, in whatever way, it will teach you. But like there's multiple different strategies to navigate the pain cave. On fearvana.com you can like I said, you can get that, and then hit me up if you have any questions. I'm happy to stay connected and to help in any way I can.
Yeah, I actually was like, so I'm doing a talk in probably about an hour, and myself, and so like that point that you exemplified is essentially having and wishing for the devil to come at you, and it's just like it's having that faith that no matter what's thrown at you, that you will be able to overcome. And so it's essentially establishing limits of not limits, because limits is fear, in my opinion, is the limitless love, and therefore it becomes effortless, right? So if you believe that it's effortless, then you're just going to keep going against higher levels against your adversary, knowing that you're building your own levels to match that and overcome each level.
Absolutely, man. Love the way you put it. Yeah, when I did that 80-hour fast, and then I was running, and I was like really tired. I hadn't eaten in 76 hours. And I, like, to your point about that faith, I was just like, and this happened many times in the darkness, where I was like, and we all have our own version of, we all have our own relationship to faith and God, and there's no right, wrong, good, bad. You know, we each have our own. But I literally was like, I surrender to you, God, and you got me. And it's done already. Like, the mission is over. It just has to physically realize, but spiritually, we're already there, you know? So that faith, to your point, is a very powerful tool to navigate the hard times.
It's like you're willing to lay down your weapons before, and knowing that you're so willing to pick them up in the fight, for the fight.
Absolutely.
And it's tough to lay down your weapons, because you have to come as you are, and you have to be okay with who you are, and show that, hey, like, this is who I am, you know. And it's like, no, but at the end of the day, like, I'm going to fight the battle, and I'm going to fight for the highest good that we can do. And so I commend you, and I appreciate your journey with that all.
Thank you. And likewise, man, amazing what you're doing to walk across the country. That's no small feat, brother.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that we're all capable of. And that's what I think is beautiful, is that we're all capable of doing whatever we set our mind to. It's just our limitations that we set upon ourselves is what drags us down, if we allow it to.
Absolutely.
So, you know, good luck on next year, brother. Like, that's going to be tough, but worth it.
Hell of a journey. Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited. It's going to be brutal, but I can't wait.
Awesome. That was it for me. Like, so cool. How do you spell Fearvana?
Fearvana.
Okay, so kind of just how it sounds. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to hit me up on there. Anybody, feel free to hit me up. My email is Akshay, that's AKSHAY, at fearvana.com. Anything I can do to serve, it'd be an honor and a pleasure.
Okay.
Just in terms of like what I've invested in, and like we yeah. Do you want me to share kind of what my investment? Yeah. How I first got into it. So first time I heard of crypto was like, if I had listened to then I would have made a ton of money. But this is a good mindset lesson: is the key in growth is you have to be willing to be wrong. So when I
Hmm.
first heard crypto, I thought this is bullshit. I was rolling my eyes like this is fake digital bullshit. This is nonsense, right? And then I was willing to be wrong. So I heard, like, I was like, all right, you're probably wrong on this. Let's listen. And I listened to people who are much smarter than myself, and I opened my mind to being wrong, to willing to learn, and it's been incredibly profitable. So I'm not like a crypto expert by any means. I have friends in the space who are way, way, way smarter than me about it. My like, I'm not trying to be the greatest crypto expert. I want to make money so I can do the crazy shit that I do and go to Antarctica and stuff like that, and to live and to serve and kind of do what I do, my zone of genius, and stay in that. But in terms of just like, I can look at some of the tokens I've sent in, like the like some of the ones that have been very like there's obviously the Bitcoin, Ethereum, some of the more standard ones, but like Matic is crushing it. eGold is another one that one of my so some of my very, very, very smart friends, they're in which another kind of sidestepping, like to point out the lesson here is partnering with people who are smarter than you and recognizing, like, I know my skill sets, and every other arena I have friends and partners that I'm partnering with for different things who are the best at what they do. So recognizing that I'm flawed in multiple ways, and here's where I'm really fucking good, and everything else I'm partnering people. So one of my friends is very well connected to eGold. He knows like the founder of eGold, and he had for multiple reasons, he's a strong believer in that one. So I have a ton of eGold. um some of the more those and then I get into some of the metaverse place. I have a Sandbox, I think, is one of the biggest in the metaverse. Uniswap, like, is another one. Aave just recently announced the launch of a stable coin. So these are some of the tokens I'm currently have like the biggest holdings in. I would say eGold, Matic, ETH are some of my Uniswap. Those are some of my, and Chainlink are some of the more bigger the bigger ones that I hold. And I do a lot of like just holding long term, and then recently I've started doing a little bit of short term playing, because I don't think we're out of the bear market yet. I think that in my humble opinion, despite some people not fully acknowledging it, we are in a recession, and it's a precarious times. And this is not to be like negative or pessimistic; it's to be realistic. So just be wary and be smart about how you're playing it. But I'm holding for the long term because the technology is not going anywhere. It's kind of like in the dot-com boom. When that thing happened, we saw a lot of companies fall apart. And so we're seeing that happening in crypto right now, right? Celsius, Voyager, all that shit that went down. We're seeing a lot of companies fall apart, but the technology is here to stay. In fact, just today, Wells Fargo had a huge announcement saying the digital assets are an innovation on par with the internet, cars, and electricity. Wells Fargo is saying this. They were very anti-crypto at one point, as were like most of the banks. So the technology is here to stay. It's going to change the world. It already is. We're sitting here talking in the metaverse. So if you're not invested in it, I highly recommend starting to get into it, because it's not only is the technology here, but it can be very, very profitable. And it's been a life changer for me, because it's allowed me to fund my very, very expensive hobbies and do some of the things that I do. And you, brother? Semper Fi, brother. Thank you so much, everybody. Been an honor, been a pleasure. And as I said, reach out if I can be of service in any way. Much love.
So this is my first hackathon. I honestly thought it was gonna be a lot different. Like it was gonna be mainly just coding, but all the speakers talking about different types of things other than coding is really cool. I think that's pretty awesome. Yeah, I was a Marine. Yeah, 2018. Yeah. What about you? Oh, nice. What was what was your MOS? You said 5 years. Oh, okay. Nice. I was a radio tech. Hmm. I also did 5 years too, but it was like I had to like they gave me like an extra year on my contract because like my schoolhouse was so long, so that's why I figured. Um, oh yeah. Oh, cool, cool. I can see it. Oh, cool. So you would say a cover letter would help because I was understanding that like it doesn't really matter if you had a cover letter. Mm, right. Okay, cool. Awesome. I have another one if nobody else has. Which so I just graduated a boot camp, and what the way they made it seem is that like, okay, you know, we know that the skill stack that you just learned is worth more than just being a junior developer. So it's like you should also be applying for like I guess the mid-level positions, but you know, I don't have experience other than the little project that we did at that towards the end. And then I also have like another boot camp that I went to, and then I have some college for computer science. So like I'm just trying to work around, I guess, that experience portion so I can at least get like maybe not a junior level position, but one above that. Um, what would you recommend for that? Should I just maybe bite the bullet and go for the junior position, or should I just keep? I don't know. Yeah, right. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. So what would be like the average for a junior developer salary? Do you know? In the, okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Got. Okay.